This is my first time making any sort of video online, but recent events warrant that we speak up. We've all seen and read about what's been happening in Palestine and the conflict between Palestine and Israel that has been eating at our souls. The reason I'm speaking today is to try to reach my friends whom I've met in the US, but I hope my words reach not only them, but the entire world. Since I was very young and I started to become aware of the world around me, I've watched Palestinians tormented and murdered by the Israeli occupation. Friends and distant relatives displaced and living in fears for their lives and their children's lives. Homes and villages wiped off of the face of the earth. So as any innocent child growing up watching this happen, a deep urge to help and an overwhelming need to speak up and prevent bloodshed was seeded in me. So if you allow me to give you a brief account on how this all began, and if you refer to the United Nations official website, you can verify what I'm about to tell you. After World War II, Palestine was ruled by the British, and Jewish refugees escaping Nazis escaped to Palestine. Over the years, Jewish refugees started gangs and were becoming violent against Palestinians, which resulted in many conflicts. The British then turned over the conflict to the UN before they left, and the UN decided to divide the land between Jewish refugees and Palestinians. And against the Arabs' wishes and the Palestinians' wishes, the Jewish refugees accepted this offer and they started their apartheid state, Israel. Yet they did not settle for the land they got, and later they invaded more parts of Palestinian land during their war with the neighboring Arab countries, displacing over 500,000 Palestinians. They then invaded Sinai, controlling most of Palestine and the Sinai Desert in Egypt. But they were later defeated and they were forced to retreat from Egypt. But they continued to crawl towards Palestinians, displacing and building settlements and colonies on their land. When Palestinians would take a stand and fight back, and when I say fight back, I mean they fight back using stones, because that's all they had. That's all they got. They did not have a functional government at the time, so all they could do was pick up stones. They did not have any weapons. They picked up stones and they threw them at soldiers. And how did soldiers respond to that? They shot them just like that. They shot them. At that time, many Palestinians were killed. More than 50% were children and teen. If anyone visited occupied Palestine in the past few years, I have friends who have, by the way, they tell you about how Palestinians are treated and the violence and discrimination they face on a daily basis. They tell you how the roads are divided by a fence to separate Palestinians from Israeli settlers. They tell you how Gaza is always under siege and how it's basically an open-air prison for Palestinians. Now, we're not talking about murder and violence against Muslims only. We're talking about murder and violence against Christians too. So this is not a religious conflict, as most people would think. This is ethnic cleansing at its worst. If you actually research what I'm saying, but not through the New York Times or any biased media, I beg you. If you search old books or newspapers, if you search the YouTube, but not videos posted by CNN, if you actually do proper research, trying to find the truth, not the fabricated truth, you'd find that even settlers would hold guns against Palestinians and take their homes by force. You'll see that Israel is using internationally banned weapons. You'll see that when Palestinians were escaping, a convoy full of children on the back of a truck was hit by an airstrike. Now, I want you to listen carefully, all right? I want you to listen carefully. I want you to take a step back, and I want you to put yourselves in Palestinians' shoes. You are living peacefully, and all of a sudden, a squadron of soldiers break into your home, and they threaten you to leave immediately without a chance to take any of your stuff with you. And if you object, if you fight back, if you refuse to leave, you're shot. All right? Imagine if you're sitting at home and all of a sudden you found that the house next to you was bombed due to an unprovoked airstrike. Imagine losing your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. Imagine your younger brother or sister going to school and never coming back because there was an airstrike on their way back, or a soldier shot at them when they were coming home. Imagine walking in the streets, right? And on a daily basis, you're scared for your life. You're discriminated against. You're randomly searched. And if you refuse, if you object, you're beaten. You're beaten up, or you're shot, or you're imprisoned. What would you do then? Imagine being forced into a plot of land, or a state, or an area. You're forced into that place, knowing fully well that your land now is a settlement for the occupiers. It's a colony for the occupiers, and you can't go back home. You have the key to your house, but you can't go back home. What would you do? Wouldn't you want your land back? Wouldn't you want to fight back? In the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, no state shall engage in acts of war unless actually invaded. In Article 1, Section 8, the Congress shall have power to provide for calling forth the militia to suppress and repel invasions. In Article 4, Section 3, no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor by the junction of two or more states or parts of states. The Congress shall have power to dispose and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory and other property belonging to the United States. The United States shall protect each state against invasion. Now, in every word in the U.S. Constitution, Israel is unconstitutional. And if Israel were to take your land instead of Palestinians, it would be constitutional to fight back. It would be constitutional to attack them and repel them, to protect American territory, to protect yourselves and your family. I'm sure civilians in most states, in that case, will carry guns and fight alongside soldiers to protect their families and their homes. And I'm sure Texans know what I'm talking about. But in a world where everyone shouts, all lives matter, the world proved that Palestinians' lives don't. In a world where children are the future, we allowed an apartheid state to clear the world of 1,500 children in the last 10 days only. The world is standing idle while Israel bombed a hospital full of children and injured civilians. And Israel is fabricating evidence to try to blame it on another party. Yet when the representative of the IMF was asked in an interview if they would allow an international committee to assess the hospital site and identify if it was attacked by Israel or not, they evaded the question 5 times. They evaded the question 5 times, and they changed the subject immediately, avoiding the risk of being exposed for what they truly are. Now, don't believe everything you see in the media. When I was in the U.S., most of my friends thought that Egyptians lived in the desert and they rode camels for transportation. Now, when I showed them pictures of Egypt, they would not believe me. And when I asked them why, they told me it's because of how the media and Hollywood portrays Egypt and the Middle East in general. So don't believe everything you see. You need to do your own research. If you're trying to find the truth, don't believe everything you see. Excuse me. Try to find the truth for yourself. And if it's up to you to believe what you want to believe. Don't be on the wrong side of history. It could be you in the place of Palestinians. It could be you. It could have been your child, God forbid, who is blown into pieces. Children in Gaza are writing their names on their body parts in case they were blown up to pieces, so that whoever finds a piece of their body, I'm sorry to say that, but it's the truth. It's a fact. They write their names on their body parts, so in case they're blown up and somebody finds a piece of their body, they would know who it belonged to. Now try to process that for a second. Try to imagine being a child who has to face that reality and accept it and live on in fear, knowing that you could be bombed at any second or shot at any second. You could lose your family, your brother, your mother, your sister. The US gives Israel $4 billion a year to support their apartheid state. They pay them with your own money, right? They pay them with your own money, enabling them to carry out their massacres. I plead that for once, just for once, the real picture and the truth prevails. If the world sees the truth, the massacres, this bloodshed would cease to exist. With your support, and only with you, the world can be on the right side of history.